beautiful chosen girls. It's so exciting to see you for this month's podcast. And we're getting closer and closer to our chosen conference. And if you haven't signed up, you need to get signed up. It's going to be amazing. We've got lots of great speakers. But hey, here today with me is my friend Tanisha Currie. And hey girls, it's time to wellness up. Let's wellness up. So Tanisha, tell me a little bit about your background. So, I know about you, but our girls don't know about you. So I want our girls to get to know you about your background and your connection to health and nutrition. We always want to be healthy chosen girls, right?
That's right. Well, first, thank you so much for such a warm welcome. Hello, chosen ladies as well. I think this is so phenomenal, Cindy, providing this place and space, particularly for women, especially as we not only consider our mind, our spirit, but also to our body. I found, sometimes this aspect can get very neglected. Sometimes we can go on AutoZone, and then we forget sometimes to take that moment of pause and to survey ourselves and say, wait a minute, have we fed ourselves today? Did we exercise today? A little bit about my background. Cindy.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but that's so good. It's so important. It's so important because that does tend to be the last thing that we think about. Yes. And and I think when you're younger, my husband talks about this all the time. You definitely don't think about it as much. But then you start to get older and you do, because you want to be healthy and live a healthy lifestyle. Absolutely. Because you want to live a long life. I want all of you girls to live a long life. And so that's why we want to talk about that, because it's so important. And these, what we're talking about today, and the things that she talks about, is going to give you a great foundation. And that's what we want, is a great foundation, because it's not a one-time thing. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle, right?
That's right. And we want our lifestyle to look good.
Oh, yeah.
And it is so good because even, from the last service that we had, Pastor talked about, us running the race. And he talked about it, and doesn't necessarily go to the swiftest, but those that are able to persevere. We're supposed to be good soldiers in that. And a part of that as well is making sure that our armor is strong. And, and so a little bit about my background. I'm a Chicago native with some California roots. I grew up playing, a lot of sports, basketball and track. And I knew early on that I had this love for science and I love people. And so how I found myself in this area of science was my father had this huge book on, in his office. And I don't know, I was like maybe in the 5th grade, and I was just so impressed, first of all, by all the different pictures, the organelles, the biology, for so many different elements. And I was immediately connected, and I knew that, that was a pathway in which I wanted to go into this area of science. And so if I can fast forward, in one aspect, I'm a nurse, so I'm an RN. I have my bachelor's as well as my master's, and I went into the military. So I'm also a military nurse officer, Army Nurse Corps officer. That's as well.
Amazing, and thank you.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you for serving.
Thank you. And so while, I came in also, as a nurse, so my perspective is very much so holistically. And, I started off, taking care of, patients. And then I ended up moving more into the leadership ranks and seeing how do I better resource for my people, because I knew where some of the gaps in the needs were. And, I will tell you, Cindy, before my this assignment here that I had, I was loving life. I was in El Paso, Texas, beautiful mountains, great weather. And, I was managing actually not just one unit, but 2. And I was really enjoying that leadership opportunity of that. And so I thought that initially, and you know how God is, he gives you like these nudges, right? And I thought essentially I was going to, end up more so going towards healthcare administration, which I did already have a basis for that in my master's, but going further into that area. But one of the things that God had alerted me to was like, hey, our team, we were doing outstanding when it came to meeting the hospital matrix. We were like number one, number 2 unit amongst all of our departments. But then what I started to notice, I would notice like, wow, we're doing great in reference to our matrix. But sometimes I noticed that my people were a little bit fatigued. or in between breaks, because in between patient care, they're trying to hurry up and grab a pizza and keep it moving.
Okay.
And so, as a nurse corps officer within our doctrine, we're taught about, hey, how to motivate, how to lead, how to influence. Those were the domains. And so when I was looking for, is it okay to talk to, my subordinates about nutrition from a different perspective without being offensive? Can I do that? And I didn't quite have that nutrition language to that extent to be able to do that. And so that actually is what led me to go and get my PhD. So I got my PhD in nursing, but with the emphasis within nutrition. And so I'm kind of a different, interesting breed, if you will. And so my dissertation studies, I was trained within the Department of Medicine, but also with the Foundation of Nursing as well. So what that meant, essentially, I was interested in how may nutrition be able to optimize our human performance.
Oh, wow.
And so before COVID happened, I was originally looking at different types of, fruit flavonoids to be able to, if I was to give individuals certain extracts or fruit extracts, how that may be able to improve their heart performance or their brain performance, if you will.
Interesting. Well, what led you down that path, though, to even think about fruit flavonoids?
Yes.
I don't know if I'm saying it right?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is intriguing.
Thank you. One of the things, the way God does those, whispers in a sense, I knew that I was coming upon a different sort of phenomenon that I couldn't quite express. I knew that while, our team was doing well, but how much better would we be able to do if we were actually able to improve our health performance? Well, how do I do that? And so the Army sent me to attend to get my PhD, Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences. And before that, I came across the organization or institution actually there. They did a lot of robust research in the area of human performance.
Okay.
I was reading a lot of their articles, and I came across one particular one about the benefits of omega-3. Okay. And omega-3, what some of the trials had showed in relation to cardiovascular disease and just some of the elements. But it just wasn't about omega-3, but it was what was in there. Okay. And then how do I find omega-3 in some of the natural foods in which that I'm consuming?
Interesting.
And so I was then paired with my chair. Unfortunately, she's no longer presently with us, but phenomenal chair. Her name is Dr. Marguerite Engler. And she actually came as a pair, if you will. She was a twin. And Dr. Marguerite Engler, in a sense, she kind of selected me, if you will. And so we shared a very common interest of wanting to see how can we help individual improve their nutritional status and also through lifestyle. Well, her and her twin, so there's a Dr. Marguerite Engler and a Dr. Mary Engler, they were actually one of the first ones to be able to discover that dark chocolate was good for our heart. Yes, ladies.
Our ladies, did you hear that? Okay, this is the best thing right out of this discussion already.
Yes, so it was so interesting.
So it was them. They did that. Yay.
Yes, they did. So it was wonderful foundational work. And so part of how they discovered that, they tested one group, they gave them regular milk chocolate, and another one they gave dark chocolate. And so then, after a few weeks, they took some blood samples, and what they were looking for epicadin level, because epicadin is what's inside the dark chocolate. And then what we know from a physiological standpoint is that epicadin, it also helps with vasodilation. So it gets even gooder, Cindy.
Oh, and you've got me here.
And the great thing with this, right? I said epicadin, it also helps with vasodilation, and how we know that, they actually utilize, it's like a measuring tool, almost like a blood pressure cuff, if you will, but it's not. But it was flow-mediated dilation. So they're able to tell they get baseline before individual consumes dark chocolate, what is their vascular arterial stiffness level looking like. And then after they consume
that means your blood flow, right?
Yes, exactly.
We're talking about your blood flow.
Exactly. And then after that, they then tested after the dark chocolate and versus the milk chocolate. And they found that, wow, individuals that were taking the dark chocolate, or the highest amount of cocoa flavonoids that's inside of this dark chocolate, actually had the better cardiovascular performance.
It is good for your heart, girls. There you go. We're giving you permission to go eat dark chocolate.
That's right, and so then it came from a journey through this relationship. And so I then connected with another one of my now still present, now dear mentors, Dr. Thomas Flagg. And so I told you COVID happened, right?
Yes.
It changed that for everything.
Oh, yes.
You can imagine, I'm in my last year of my dissertation year, and the military says you got 3 years and you need to be done with a PhD. Most people don't finish their PhD for 5 to 7 years.
Oh, my
Army
goodness.
is not playing.
Wow.
Yes. And so
That's a lot.
by the grace of God, a lot of studying, great support. And so then I met Dr. Thomas Flagg. And so then he taught me how to, because I couldn't do this human study, how to now grow cells, if you will, in this kind of, if you think like a petri dish.
Yeah.
So I grew cardiovascular cells.
Wow.
And I also grew microglial cells that, microglial cells are typically found within our brain. Because the reason why I wanted a microglial cell model to be able to test as well, because I wanted to know if I fed these cells these various different types of flavonoids or berry extracts, which one would help to reduce oxidative stress the most. Now, here's another concept, oxidative stress.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, so look, this conversation is probably going to go from physiological, and I promise we're going to go further out. But I think these concepts are so important to understand. So I'm going to tell you up front, the top 2 things. So one, I'm going to go out and I'm going to zoom back in. So out. So some of the biggest things that women are dealing with across the country that is huge. Number 1 is heart disease.
Okay.
Right. So that was a reason why partly a lifelong mission of my mentors was really to get after how do we help to impact
and get better with our heart and our cardiovascular system.
Exactly. And then, and then there's cancer. That's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
And then also you see rising up the ranks as well is depression.
Yeah, that's true. You've definitely heard a lot about that during COVID and more after, and still to this day, yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this, ladies, right? So what if I told you that the premise for many of these chronic diseases, and even acute, and also too for those also, as well as for my athletes as well, many of these disease processes, they're stemmed by many of them by 2 processes, not just 2, but 2 big ones, I'll say.
Okay.
And that is oxidative stress and inflammation. So I told you I'm going to zoom to the physiological, and then don't worry, I'm going to work myself back, okay? So, remember atoms in basic science, right? And our atoms, they have these electrons, they have these orbits, and our atoms, it likes paired electrons. And so we have billions and billions of electrons, within our internal environment or within our cells. So sometimes what happens is these electrons will become rogue. All right. Okay. They'll just want to have a mind of its own.
Sounds like people.
Exactly. And these electrons will kind of spew off this kind of atomic spear, if you will. And so what causes this, right? Things that can cause is if a person maybe not working out as much, you can also, and so this is what's creating, so when those electrons spew off, that's what's called a free radical, right?
Oh, I've heard of free radicals.
Exactly, yes. And so these free radicals, not that free radicals are all bad, it's all about balance, right? And this is the whole thing, even nutrition, it's all about balance. But when we get too much of a chain reaction happening with these free radicals, what it does, it wreaks havoc in the body. And it can even impact our mitochondria cells, which is a powerhouse that actually helps to produce energy for the other cells. But we don't want our free radicals to get too much out of hand. And if it gets too much out of hand, it can cause what's called oxidative stress. A great way of looking at this, if I bit into an apple, I place the apple down here, right? You would probably see that apple turn brown after a while, right?
Sure.
That is a state of oxidation. And so much like with, within our body of our cells as well, is oxidative stress can occur. Now, oxidative stress naturally occurs within our body, but we don't want it to occur too much.
Oh, okay.
And when it gets out of hand, it can then start to impact our aging process. And we want to look well.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Definitely got my attention. We want to stay younger.
Yeah. So
no more oxidative stress for me.
Yes, and we want to keep that balance, right? So when we have too much oxidative stress, what it can do, it can impact our DNA structures. It can also cause chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, neurological disease, also early on in life, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and those sort of things as well, if we get too much built up oxidative stress. But here's something good about this, okay? And this was part of my research as well. Remember I talked about kind of that atomic structure and those electrons around those orbits, and it likes to be paired, and sometimes it goes rogue. Well, one great thing about our body is, number one, it naturally already has antioxidants built within it, and it's called glutathione.
I've heard of that.
Mm-hmm. And so where else can we get antioxidants? Through the foods that we eat.
Yeah.
And so when that free radical goes rogue, it goes off that orbital. Well, then because we consume fruits and vegetables, it can actually replace that electron that went off the orbital, thereby causing a homeostasis, stable environment for us.
That's so interesting and so good to know.
Yes, absolutely. So, so it matters in, what we eat, and, and we get our antioxidants, through our fruits and vegetables and other resources in which that we eat. And just know, even at the cellular level, I know even though you can't see it, it is making a difference. In fact, there's, has been research that has been able to, here's an interesting one. I was recently reading a research. It was by Ebenezer et al. It was within this particular study, and what it was, he put a rodent on one side and he fed this rodent blueberries, and then he put it, and it was like a glass case, but it was a separation. He put a cat on the other side, thereby stimulating kind of this post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, the cat with the mouse. Yeah,
exactly.
For sure. That would be very stressful.
Exactly, within this rodent model.
Yeah, within the rodent, it would be very stressful.
Absolutely. Yes. But what this rodent did have, or this rat had, it had some armor on board because it had been eating blueberries.
Interesting.
And so what they found was that this, in comparison, of course, they did comparison with those rats that also were not consuming blueberries for, of course, over a few weeks.
Right.
And so, but they found the rats that did consume the blueberry over a certain amount of weeks actually did better in the rat maze test. Okay. And they did, and they also too showed decreased inflammation within their lab results as well. And so overall, and also neurologically, they perform better.
Interesting.
And so these rats had less of kind of a post-traumatic stress response. The ones that were protected by the nutrition in which they ate.
Wow, that is so interesting. So that would definitely help us as people, if we are having a good diet, that it's going to help us with the stress, the things that are coming against us, that would stress us out.
Yes.
Makes our immune system stronger.
Ooh, that is so good. You're actually so speaking on a physiological level right now, Cindy.
How about that?
You are talking, actually, that is so good. You're actually talking also too about another concept here that's been booming, and we're still trying to figure out on this microbiome system. And our microbiome, scientists is trying to figure out, like, if we can figure out how do we best support a great microbiome, how do we, figure it may be
Which
able
is
to
your
solve.
Immune system.
Yes, and
your immune system.
Exactly, your immune system. You go, Cindy. And but there's a bi-directional relationship that they're finding between our brain and our gut, and what can affect, like our gut is like our lifestyle, our stress, if matter of exercise, drugs, recreational, non-recreational. Drugs as well. And so, essentially individuals, that microbiome or that are more or less, stress, if you will, they tend to have decreased, cortisol levels, so decreased stress levels. Also, their neural circuitry is, a lot more or calm or balanced. And then also too, they have tighter gut junctions, so less of kind of the leaky gut or things of those natures that are occurring as well. And so paying attention to our body, I think, is key.
Yeah.
I think is also important as well as we're having this conversation. That ladies are talking to each other about health.
Yes, for sure.
And so
I do see and hear that a lot more with with women and talking about their health. Maybe it's because of my age. Like I said, I think younger people don't talk about it as much, but I am seeing that they are getting more interested in it and wanting to go to the gym and how their lifestyle is. Mm-hmm. And boy, I just encourage them to start at an early age, that it becomes actually a lifestyle. I mean, we've tried to do that in my own house, from a long, long time ago, eating, and we can always improve, but eating well, exercising, and those kinds of things. Yes. So this is really interesting, and I definitely want to stay young.
Yes, absolutely. And so sometimes when I go and I do, some of these presentations, people are like, oh man, no, don't look at me, I'm eating a burger. I'm like, no, I like burgers every now and then. Again, it's all about balance. So I said, no need for food confessions here.
Yeah.
And so, so just kind of some short pointers that I, if I may, just wanted to provide as well.
Yeah.
And also for some great brain food multipliers. Like one is omega-3. So our brains are, it's naturally made up of lipids and fats. And so it has like DHA and EPA. And so when we consume our omega-3, in which we can get through sources of mackerel, salmon, our nuts, legumes, and things like that, that's going to help increase like our DHA and EPA. And so that's important. So eggs, that's another one. Eggs has not only macro but micronutrients, so our vitamins like A, C, and E, and even our B vitamins as well. That links a little bit to depression as well. And how, because there's also been evidence to show that, some individuals that may suffer from depression may actually lack some deficiencies in some of their, vitamin Bs or their omega levels. Loose data in reference as it relates to vitamin D. Still more studies that needs to be done within this area. Flavonoids. So when I talk about flavonoids, I'm talking about eating a rainbow. These are your fruits and vegetables, such as your, and also when I was testing within these cellular models, I tested various different berry extracts. So blueberries, Aranea berry, tart cherry, different ones, a blend of the mixed, and wanting to see which was able to reduce oxidative stress the most. Within the heart model, now this particular time, I found that the black currant extract helped to reduce oxidative stress the most. And so typically the theory is if you can help to reduce oxidative stress, that's maybe going to help also to reduce inflammation as well, typically. But you have to test both. The other one on the microglia cell, I tested
your brain.
Yes, thank you. I tested a buffet of a range of these different sort of berry extracts as well, and I found that the cranberry extract actually helped to reduce oxidative stress the most within this particular environment. But I tell individuals in general is just eat your fruits and vegetables. You're just going to win, and that is some truth to that, as well as that. Typically fruits that are more darker or vegetables that are more darker, some will have actually like the higher oxidal radical scavenging activity, so the darker, so like the darker the fruit, the vegetable, sometimes it can actually have the higher level of antioxidant properties in some cases. Bananas are good. We talked about dark chocolate, the Engler group doing that.
Yeah.
Teas are great. Teas, I love tea. I drink tea daily.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Certain kinds are better? Or?
It's a great, I've seen reports, evidence to go back and forth on this. But tea has its EGs, I believe it's ECGs. I always get those mixed up, but but it has bioactive chemical properties where it's also very effective as well. So black or green tea, they both have good evidence.
Your whole system. Okay.
Correct.
That's good.
Coffee. Now, also in moderation, but coffee, could also be a great stimulant used for the brain as well. And then just in general, because I told you about from a holistic perspective, but oatmeal, whole grains, pasta, cereal, brown rice, that's also good. And then when you think about nutrition, right, think about it as a system. So you still want to ensure that you get good sleep, that you're exercising, and all these things are going to work together greatly to be able to improve our overall human performance.
And that's all of that. And that's really that's how it started you on this whole journey.
Yes.
Was the human performance,
yes.
right? Yeah, because you're like, man, we are doing great, we're rocking it out, but
right.
We could maybe do better if my team or the group that I'm working with are healthier, they're taking care of themselves, they're going to live longer, they're going to stay younger.
That's right.
Yeah, and so it's all works together, and then they're performing better, so they're doing their job better. So it just starts with all of that, right?
Yes. I love that. And one of my sayings is it's not just, like I always say, my job is not to tell you what to eat. We have great dietitians for that.
Yeah.
But more so my job is to make sure you're thinking about what you're eating.
That's good. Good point.
Yeah. And so, so I hope that even when you look at an apple or you look at a dark chocolate, realize that this is actually could be providing you a great source of not only rich nutrients, but there's actual active bioactive compounds that are working at the cellular level within your body to help reduce oxidative stress, to help maybe even to reduce inflammation. But it's all about the dietary pattern, and it's a balance of things. So we're in a society where we have a westernized diet, which is often described in literature as a lot of processed, highly processed foods and high inflammatory, right, and those sort of things. And again, it's about growth. It's about balance. But the thing of it is, we just want to make sure that we don't go too far to the right or too far to the left, but we're kind of, in the center. And then speaking, I would say, to your healthcare provider, and also to a nutritionist, because you talked about as well, Cindy, about at different life stages in our life.
Yeah, and that's true, because you do have different it's like this is the season I'm in now, and definitely I'm in the season now. I don't have kids, got grandkids, but different stages, yes.
Mm-hmm, yes, absolutely. And I would say me being like now I turned 42. And so,
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. It is a blessing every year.
Yes, that's what I say.
Yes. And so, but also realizing, as well, is that my nutrition needs are changing a little bit.
They do change. Mm-hmm. That is very true. You're right about that.
Yes. And also, one of the things that I'm doing as well, Cindy, I have a good support network. So I talk to other colleagues and peers, and this also too encouraging as well for the ladies as well, to talk, to each other about what maybe different changes are happening as you're growing and you're developing, because we're always growing and developing. We're making new cells, where cells are dying off or in general, but how do we change over time? And so I found at this point, one of the things that I have made myself an appointment to get actually a nutritional assessment, and so a bod pod. I wanted to know, what is my lean mass to my fat mass? Maybe what I did for exercise, maybe do I need to increase, right? Exactly, to tweak. And even lab values, because at this point, as we're going to premenopause or perimenopause, typically a decreased estrogen level. So what does those mean? So all those different factors taken into account.
Yeah, that's so true. I recently did that too, and I mean, I get a physical every year, get my blood work checked, and they tell you things. But I did a nutrition assessment again, and I do that periodically myself, and. Yes, girl.
Outstanding.
So yes, I did, and then even when my blood work, everything was good, but they was like my physician was like, okay, you need to be eating more greens. And I'm like he's like 7 or 8 cups a day. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how am I going to do that? I'm like, what about juicing? Because I've done juicing.
Yes.
It's not the same as you eating them. There's something it's an enzyme. He says when you chew greens that's released in your body that's really good for your body.
You're right. Yes.
Well, that's what he told me. So I'm like, but okay, how am I? So I'm really trying to do better on getting my greens. I'm putting spinach. Now I'm not chewing it, but I do put spinach, like 2 cups of spinach in my protein drink in the morning. Then I'll have a salad and try to have 4 cups or so of greens. But then it was just, and then the other thing for me that was really surprising at my age, okay, now again, like you said, stages, is I needed a lot more protein. I really wasn't eating enough protein. Because when we get older, now not your age, a little older, I'm not going into what that is. Let's just say over 60. But when you get into that, because your protein builds muscle is going to help your bones. And we have to work on our bones when we get older. So I was like really having to work at increasing my protein levels. And so I am still working on that.
Yes.
It's a work in progress, but it is so great, like you said, to do that, if you can, have those assessments, or definitely making sure you're getting a physical, that you're getting your blood checked every year, seeing what's going on and your physician can give you suggestions and things like that, because the whole idea is to live that amazing, abundant, finish strong, like Rick has been preaching, finish strong.
Right, absolutely, finish strong, and we don't have to suffer,
Right.
There are, lab, so you have your objective assessment and you have your subjective assessment. Subjective is how do you feel as, a person on what's going on, and the more information that you can provide your healthcare provider, they can take a look at labs. And don't be afraid to have that, conversation like, hey, well, would it be okay if we checked my hormone level?
Oh, yes,
and be an advocate, absolutely, for yourself. So those are a lot of great things. And even when you're talking about, a salad, I think that's phenomenal. Sneaking in there salmon or sprinkling on there some walnuts, or whatnot. And so little things like that.
Yeah, I make sure I do get the protein in there, and I'm trying to put different things in the salad. Like, for sure I'm getting proteins so that I get more protein. and then please do not cover it in like really heavy ranch dressing, okay? Even though I love ranch dressing, don't do that. That's just going to take away everything you're trying to do. It's like, okay.
Yes.
But, okay, I'll do more of a vinaigrette dressing.
Yes, absolutely. And then also you mentioned a very good point. I think also too, sometimes I know that women can struggle with this. Sometimes like we get hard on ourselves, sometimes like it's like, man, I blew it and I was trying to. It's okay. You know what? It's another day. You just start again.
It is okay. It is okay. So don't be hard on yourself. Thank you for pointing that out. I mean, for any of us,
That's
you learn the things you need to learn. You want to implement those, and you're going to have days, and it is okay to have a cheat day or a cheat meal, I should say. It's okay to do that. And definitely my vice is chocolate, as everybody knows. So
dark chocolate.
Okay, dark chocolate. Okay, so suggestions. Our last question. I know we need to wrap this up, but this has been great information.
Yes.
And hey, girls, let's wellness up, okay?
Yes.
Is suggestions that we can do to support our health better. And you gave some of those.
Right, absolutely. The only extent, that was like now I'm just trying to move into a phase where I can be a better support to organizations and individuals within organizations. So I am now an element of exploring with some of my colleagues this aspect called leader-inspired nutrition. And so more of kind of like how can we help from like an executive coaching, if you will, from a civilian aspect, but from a military, what sort of leadership toolkit can we begin to build? Because I stated earlier about sometimes find that nutrition language. You don't have to be a dietitian in order to talk about your health and nutrition. You can have simple language, and we can all come to one common core. And so what this looks like, leader-inspired nutrition is one, identifying like those leaders or role models that are doing like you, Cindy. Great job. You're talking about salads and protein going to the provide. You're talking about those things, which then may also too influence me and others as well. And so it's about leaders role modeling. What are our eating behaviors looking like? Understanding. There was a recent White House report that was dropped about, I believe, a year and a half ago, and it talked about how we need to improve our nutrition environment. One, because of food insecurity is a real issue. And then also the other thing, to need to increase physical activity, to need to increase more nutrition education within our schools and other resources as well. Culture plays a big part of this conversation when we're talking about food as well. Appreciating each other's food background, sitting down and eating together. The biggest thing I think that is so empowering is supporting each other, is talking about food, eating with each other, and that whole communal is huge. And if you notice, sometimes mood changes, it could be other things. We didn't get into the element of depression much. There's one theory that suggests it may be an imbalance between our neurotransmitters, which is our dopamine, serotonin, and our norepinephrine. And so whenever there's like an imbalance, it can then at times maybe trigger us feeling depressed, and also to impede our mood and our learning, and from those different aspects. And so with the rising evidence of nutrition, that may play a part in that. But along would also want to encourage individuals as well is with counseling and also the proper support. There was a recent suicide line because our suicide rates have risen as well. And so there's helplines out there where you call this particular suicide hotline and individual, and I tested it for myself because I was like, is this, and how long would someone from the national crisis, because that's also to one of the elements as well within the military perspective that has been looked at as well. Okay. And so it's important to know, I think, that ladies, you're not in this alone. Health is important. Fuel your body and your mind with so good foods. Yeah. And the Word of God. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much for being here today and giving us all this great information. I know this is going to help all of us and continues to help me and just encourages me to hear and listen and just to, and I have a balanced life, body, soul, and spirit. Yes. And that's what God wants, all of it, right? And so that's what we're working towards. And it's a work in progress. So I encourage you, you aren't alone, and none of us are perfect, but we're all on the journey together, and we can all get better and just move, and you go in, you don't have to be a member of a gym, go for a walk. I mean, right. I was telling somebody that was telling me, they were like, I'm trying, and so just try to go for a walk, 10 minutes. I know it's hot early in the morning or late afternoon. You've got to start somewhere, But we're here to support you. We love you because, girls, we want you to live a long, fruitful, healthy life. That's what I'm talking about. Wellness up. So thank you for joining us today on this podcast. And again, get registered for Chosen. It'll be here before you know it. Chosen Power. I love you, girls, and have a great day.